up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast, joined today by Andrew Callahan from the Boston Herald, one of my favorite writers on the beat. We've got a lot of great beat writers out there right now covering the Patriots as they transition into what could be the 3.0 version of the dynasty, or could just be another team in the National Football League. What's up, my guy?
How are you doing, Tommy? Thanks for having me, bud.
I'm glad you're here. So as you notice, the center is nowhere to be seen. And that's because he's taking a very, very, very well-deserved brief hiatus. I'm sure he's got spread on his lap the Dane Brugler beast, as Andrew Callahan suggested, which is the draft Bible encyclopedia, one of them. But that gives us an opportunity to bring in Andrew. And we're going to keep it simple today. We're going to do tiny little lists of three and glean from Andrew's bald head as much information as we can from his viewpoint about the Patriots. The first thing I want to hit with you, my guy, 3 reasons the Patriots might be better than we think.
Yeah, this is a tough sell in my mind just because they're, for a lot of reasons, but mostly they're projected to face the 6th toughest schedule in the league. Now, let's say they luck out. Vegas is wrong based on those projected win totals. Number one with a bullet has to be Mac Jones, right? This kid is going into year 2, proverbial year 2 leap. But also you look back at last season, he had one of the best seasons for any rookie in NFL history. So on paper, we know good to great quarterback play can paper over a lot of issues you might have. Brady did this for years, bad pass protection, get it out more quickly. Separation's an issue, put it in a spot where only your guy can get it. I'm not saying he'll be a top 10 quarterback next year, but you look at that schedule I referenced, he'll be the best quarterback in 8 to 9 games, depending how you feel about Matt Ryan and Kirk Cousins. And I think that's enough you can work with.
That being said, I probably should also establish when I say they may be better than we think, how good do you think the Patriots are? Because I think they are a 500 team. Yeah, even though 500 no longer exists.
I mentioned those Vegas projected win totals. They're over-unders 8.5. So you're talking either about 8-9 or 9-8. And I think 9-8 is about where they are, because I think I'm a little bit higher on them. And one of the reasons is the second reason is, you would be more optimistic about them. And I know you've written a ton about Jonnu Smith, this kind of rehab image campaign. I think he's almost got going on through a couple of media members, and Nelson Aguilar. And let's start with Aguilar. I tweeted this the other day. Mac Jones last season, you would think like he had pissed him off in practice the way he was throwing deep to him. He only got 40% of his deep throws were accurate to Nelson Aguilar. That was by far lowest in the team. So I think if that number goes up 1 or 2, he catches 1 or more of those posts or go routes or whatever it is, he comes from, 475 yards to 650. If you went into last season saying, hey, Nelson Aguilar is going to have 5 touchdowns, 650 yards, that's a win. I think he bounces back. Jonnu Smith, basically the argument is you can't get any worse. The kid's 26. He's in his physical prime. He had less than 300 yards and 1 touchdown last season, and basically got phased out of the offense before Halloween. So again, same thing with Mac Jones. Year 2, you got a full offseason in the system. And if they're not going with a fullback, that means more snaps for him.
Give me a third. And I like those points. Now, wait 1 quick second before we hit the third. Did you say that you believe there's a concerted media effort going on to pump the tires of Jonnu Smith?
I got to say 80% of the Jonnu Smith content I've seen is from my guy here who's having me on right now.
But I'm only saying it because it's the most obvious place. I mean, I don't know Jonnu Smith. I wasn't down there. I don't know him from Adam. I mean, it's obvious. That's the one spot it's got to improve. They're paying the guy $55 million or whatever the hell it is.
Well, I think also, right, because of his role, if he makes a step up, that's not only just a step up as a receiver, right? It's as a run blocker. It's in pass protection. It's unlocking all the 2 tight end personnel that we thought they were going to run last year. And that ends up being not even their best running personnel grouping or passing personnel grouping. So you're right. I think there's a ripple effect if he makes a step.
So do you think there's some kind of payola going on between myself and the Jonnu Smith?
No. I'm kidding. But it's everything. If you're asking,
I don't think you're kidding. This is the broadside kind of stuff that Phil's not going to engage in. All right, fine. No payola. Don't Jonnu payola. Your third point is what?
Pass rush, right? Like we're all bemoaning, freaking out of coverage, and deservedly so. Yep. But the Patriots are also going to face one of the softest schedules in terms of pass protection, according to Ben Waldman, the Athletic, who does all these projections based on, they incorporate some PFF grades. The weight the tackles are more important to pass protection than your center or guards. How does everything look? 10 of the Patriots games next season are against teams in the bottom 12. So Matt Judon, I think, is a better shot last year. Christian Barmore, another year 2 guy. Josh Uche, what do you got in year 3?
Right.
And also, and you look at how they finished down the stretch last year. I think people forget how just that pass rush evaporated. 2 quarterback hits per game. Couldn't get to Josh Allen twice. Tua Tagovailoa could have set up a picnic in the pocket and enjoyed all the time in the world. And that's why they lost those games on defense. And I think they take, a step up, partly because their opposition's coming down to them, but also you're going to get more production from your key guys.
We get so many different little lists to get to, but I'm going to ask you that about the pass rush. We spend time on corner. We spend time on left tackle. We spend an inordinate amount of time, I think, on wide receiver, even though even before Devontae Parker came in, it wasn't oh my God, they have nobody to put out there. But we don't really talk about edge as much. And you need somebody complimentary, I think, on the other side of Matt Judon to a Ninkovich level player. Like I'm even thinking Jadeveon Clowney, someone like that, just edge setting and 5 or 6 sacks. Feelings on that?
I love Clowney. I think the last 2 off seasons, especially last year I was on, this is a guy who's regarded as one of the best edge defenders from a run defense standpoint in the whole league. And it's not sexy, but how often do we see these guys, whether it's Chase Winovich or Josh Uche, or you go back through the years, that are pulled by Bill because you can't set the edge on 1st and 2nd down. And that's really all they need. Now, the other part about that is, Kyle Van Noy was their first transaction in March. Pre-free agency, 10 days out, they said, thanks, but no thanks. Okay, Chase Winovich traded out the door. We understand with Winovich. I think there's something, though, that they seem to know that we don't about this edge group where they're more confident in them than we are from the outside. And that doesn't always land, but I think the development of guys like, I didn't even mention Ronnie Perkins and Anfernee Jennings, might offer more hope in 1st and 2nd down too.
Maybe Ronnie Perkins is going to prove me wrong, but I spent a little time watching Ronnie Perkins about a month ago. He's glacially slow and unathletic.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that they spent a 3rd round pick on the guy. I really can't. And then for Anfernee Jennings, Mike Reese reported the end of August last year, part of the reason he was missing at the beginning of camp was he wasn't in shape. And that may have led to, in some ways, Reese reported, his being sat down for the year. So those are your 2 3rd round picks at linebacker. So that to me is troubling. Moving on to the next 3 things. 3 things, Andrew Callahan from the Boston Herald, that you can't stop worrying about.
Well, it was a nice transition. I would say some of that is the draft history, right? Because you're going into this draft still in need of a cornerback. And you go, what the hell is going on at this position? Where I'm rereading some stuff I did last year, pre and post free agency, to get a gauge of, where have we been the last 12 months? I couldn't believe the sentence going, the Patriots will start Stephon Gilmore and J.C. Jackson at corner next year as the NFL's best corner tandem. Going, where has that gone? We all know. Okay, so as it stands now, they are going to start 2 of Jalen Mills, Terrence Mitchell, and Malcolm Butler, who hasn't been in a football field since August of 2021. I don't think, even if they take a 1st round corner, you're not going to stop.
You can have it. You can have it if you have the safety depth and the Jonathan Jones presence, and hopefully he stays healthy for their sake. You get enough guys, but when you keep adding Tyreek Hill and already have Jalen Waddle and Stephon Diggs is there, and Isaiah McKenzie's back
now. Yeah,
I mean, I'm just throwing out guys who might be middling, i.e. Isaiah McKenzie, but they still had 11 catches on 12 targets for 130 yards, whatever the hell it was. They weren't able to cover at the end of last year with one of the 5 best corners in the league, and now they've gotten worse.
Right. It's bad. The other part about that is coaching, right? We that's the other position area that we've beaten to death this offseason, deservedly so. And look, as Bill claims to be, I don't really care about titles, but you do care about quality offensive coaches. And so far, we haven't seen a whole lot of evidence that Matt Patricia, now moving to the offensive side, is a great defensive coach. So forgive me for not being completely inspired by that move. I think in talking to some people around the league, they're higher on Joe Judge, who seems to be working with the quarterbacks. But Nick Caley, going into his 5th year as a tight ends coach, is your most experienced offensive assistant. And if Belichick doesn't see him as a potential play caller or coordinator, that's a problem. A, because he might just skip town like everyone else did a couple months ago, or you're handing the reins to someone who we just mentioned coming over in Patricia and Judge, who haven't coached offense in a decade. Judge, of course, at 19, but he's not working with receivers again.
Yeah. And from my understanding at that point, there were receivers who were not over the moon about the coaching that they were getting that year.
Mm-hmm.
And there were folks who were on the staff at that time who were not psyched about the tutelage that the receivers were getting at that time. So that is certainly a concern. As it turns out, speaking with Julian Edelman at the Super Bowl when I had a visit with him, and we talked about it was prior to all the moves being made there. It was prior to McDaniels leaving, actually. And he said if McDaniels does go, Nick Caley or Mick Lombardi would be the best options. And I mentioned Judge, and he goes,
Yeah.
But he was high on Nick Caley. So maybe that will be the spot that opens our eyes to, hey, Bill had it sussed out beforehand. So that's two positions of worry for you, coaching staff, cornerback. You got one more on you, or are you all set?
Yeah, no, I got one more. And it's not even really a single position or area. And I'm going to take this from an AFC executive I talked to last month and had a big Q&A post for agency. What are the Patriots doing? Where do they stand now? One of the questions I asked him was, what's their biggest need? And again, he didn't go one position. He didn't go one area or front seven or anything. He said just team speed. And the way I see it is not so much how do you run sideline to sideline, because we know Bill has always traded off a few extra pounds in strength that'll hold up over the course of the season for, a few tenths of a second shaved off your 40. But I see it as explosion. Who are guys that on Saturday night before a 1 p.m. kickoff at Gillette, the opposing offensive and defensive coordinator is wherever they are, and they're staying up an extra 10 minutes going, I'm afraid of who? And right now it's no one really on either side of the ball because they're not that explosive yards after catch, on offense or defensively. He's going to go get an interception like J.C. Jackson. Someone like that, I would love to see in first round for them as someone who's generating turnovers. Or if you're a receiver, a guy like Jamison Williams takes the top off the defense, is just get the ball in his hands and he's a touchdown waiting to happen. They have very few guys like that, if any at all.
How often do we hear Bill speak on Wednesday about an opposing team and then get to their receivers and say, he can score from anywhere on the field. He's a threat to go from anywhere on the field. And even when the Patriots were comprised of Edelman and Amendola and Gronkowski, and, they had Brandon Cooks, but just stick with those guys. Edelman and Amendola would make people miss. You could throw a tear screen to Amendola on 3rd and 4, and he'd get you 14 because 3 guys would miss. The Patriots don't really have anybody who can make yards after catch. It's catch, throw, tackle, which results in 13 play, 58-yard drives, which are glacial, and they're extremely hard to execute.
Yeah, your margin of error is so thin, right? And you just don't have the talent to overcome that, where if you get one holding penalty or a sack, the drive's just over.
And that's why so many of their explosive plays are schemed up. They're either screens, perfectly schemed, which again, that goes back to the guy who draws them up is Josh McDaniels and times them up, or there's some guy who gets lost on the weak side on kind of a throwback and he's 25 yards downfield and there's nobody else on the screen. And that's a schemed up play where you busted them because they got confused. It's smarts, but it's not athleticism. And it's fun to be smart. It's fun to be smarter, but it's also helpful to have, Julian Edelman on 3rd and whatever it was in the Super Bowl, take the hit from Cam Chancellor that he does and make 14 yards after it. James White being back will help, I think, with a little bit of that explosiveness, but James White is certainly not anybody's idea of an explosive player. He's one cut elusive, but he's not going to break tackles. Yeah, so I couldn't be more in agreement with you. Go ahead.
Reminds me of the quote. This came out in Sports Illustrated after they lose to the Eagles in the Super Bowl. It was Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey, one of those guys. They're saying, we're scouting the Patriots defense ahead of that game. And before you always go, hey, in the scouting report, these guys have got players. This pass rush to that corner, watch out for them. We're watching their tape and we go, these guys have got coaches. They're really down. They're fundamental. None of them scare us. And I think that's now trickled over right to the offensive side where, 18, the defense was excellent, 19, number 1 in the league, 20, of course, the roster falls off. They've gotten back to, there's still a lot of coaches everywhere and it doesn't scare you. That game against Buffalo, right? The wild card loss. Nelson Aguilar picked in the end zone, very well schemed play, outstanding Micah Hyde I'll cover for my coach's ass with that interception. And then Brandon Bolden drops the schemed wheel route that he had all alone for a touchdown. Should have been 2 touchdowns, but the margin of error with the talent is that thin, and you step outside of that, and it ruins your schemed up plays that are really like you're talking about or what you're relying on.
Let's jump to need positions. Your 3 biggest need positions. We'll go brief on this because I'm sure it's pretty simple. What do you got?
Yeah. I'll keep it quick. Corner, we talked about Jalen Mills, Terrence Mitchell, Malcolm Butler. Look, if you're playing Madden tomorrow with the Pats roster, you're getting smoked. The spread is -10, mostly because of that group. I would say we talked about explosion. You're not finding a lot of those guys in free agency. You just need some explosion somewhere. It's probably going to come in the draft. I don't think they're going to take a receiver in the first round. I think day 2, they should. And you need someone in offense just to, again, keep an opposing defensive coordinator up an extra 10, 15 minutes a night, because right now it's just not happening.
Yeah, you need an excellent corner, high level.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. The third one, and I haven't heard a lot of people talk about this, and I think part of it is positional value, but I think they need to upgrade in the middle at defensive tackle because of the way they got pushed around, down the stretch, everything went to crap. But you look at their numbers in terms of rushing yards allowed between the tackles, 5th most per game in the NFL and 7th highest per carry average for their opponents. So Devon Godchow got a contract that established him as what should have been top 10, top 12 nose tackle in the league. Frankly, didn't live up to it. And I think him and Lawrence Guy are solid. But if you want to upgrade that defense, which last year, say what you will about Hightower and Juwan Bentley in coverage, those are 2 of your best run-stuffing linebackers, not just in the division, not the AFC, the entire league. And you are still getting led up as one of the top 10 worst run defenses between the tackles. So I think that's an area where you'd love, a big run stuffer, 2-gapping guy that's going to give you what you thought you were getting last year from Godchow.
And I'd say, too, in that spot, if you're going smaller at the second level, and Hightower's not back, and I do think Hightower's play dropped off significantly at the point of attack, but Bentley had a very good year. But if you're going to get smaller and play 230-pound linebackers as opposed to 240 and 250-pound linebackers more significantly, you're right. You need somebody who's going to give those guys a little bit more cover so that backs are not hitting that second level going 38 miles an hour. Last one.
Well, that was 3 for me, but
What was 3? You said corner?
Corner, explosion, talking to receiver, tight end, or D tackle. People are going to go, hey, why not linebacker? Because, we're talking about Hightower's falling off, Bentley's back, Mac Wilson. I think between Mac Wilson, Bentley, and Cameron McGrone, who people have also forgotten about, 5th round pick. He's about 230, 235. He's got more of that range. You're going to hit on one of those inside linebackers. Yep. To me, when you look at the amount of base defense they play, I don't know the number off the top of my head for last year, but in 2020, it was 5%. And I'll tell you, the number of times they had 3-4 personnel last year can't be more than double that. So I think the need for a second inside linebacker is a lot lesser than we're making it out to be, mainly because the way they play, you're kind of 2-4-5s, or you have 2 inside guys in whatever nickel package you want. One of them is a safety. Kyle Duggar's been doing this now for a couple of years. Adrian Phillips for 2, Patrick Chung before that. That's how the Patriots offset the need for a fast inside linebacker. We'll just throw a 3rd safety down there.
Which I don't hate. And that's why I don't hate the idea of Nakobe Dean, who might be one of the players that you love in the draft, the Georgia linebacker that Phil spoke to earlier this week on the Next Pats podcast. I want you people to listen to that if you haven't listened to it, because he had Nakobe on, and Nakobe has a tremendously deep accent. Hit me with your 3 players you love in the draft.
Yeah, I got to tell you, Nakobe almost made this list just based on that interview and that accent. And the most common, he's not one of my lists, but the common comp you'll see from him is Jonathan Vilma. And I'll tell you, I don't know what prompted me to read one of Michael Holley's books from early in the dynasty.
Yep.
Both of you guys were crushing the beat. Vilma was on Bill's list of, I love these guys in the 03 draft. So it's not exact, and he's a lot lighter than any other inside linebacker. But if they pull the trigger on Nakobe, it's because of those Vilma shades. But sticking with linebacker, Troy Anderson. I'm going to do my best Mel Kiper impression here. Montana State, 6'3", 243, runs legit 4'4", 2-time captain. He's a smart guy. I talked to this guy for about 10 to 15 minutes at the combine, and he's only played linebacker. Sure, it's Montana State, whatever, but for 2 to 3 years now. Played quarterback before, running back, and you know why? Because of the testing numbers I just showed you. 4'4" at running at 240. So he's a guy that I think you bring in, understanding he'll probably come on in year 2. But in the meantime, throw him in dime packages. You're covering running backs or tight ends, or you're blitzing, and that's about it. He's new to his position. He's physical. He's super raw. But this is a guy, when I talk about smart, finished in the finalists for like the FCS Heisman, basically. Their total academic award for who are the smartest guys we got in the field. And he's right up there with anybody else.
Awesome. I like that one. Next one.
Receiver. Let's satiate everyone listening and waiting for who's the receiver. I like Penn State's Jahan Dotson. And this kid, you know, you want to go back to the measurables, 6 foot, 178. That is too light. You know, Nelson Aguilar looks light. He's 20 pounds heavier as listed on the Patriots website. He needs to bulk up. But what you get in Dotson is basically a well-rounded version of Aguilar. He's got incredible wiggle, short acceleration spaces to get himself open. He can play inside the slot and out. And he has got the biggest catch radius, where he was playing with a fifth-year starter at Penn State, who I can tell you, having covered that team, people are just sick of out there because the passes could be up here, they could be down there, they could be over your head. Dotson is catching them all. So
why? Short area quickness?
Yeah, well, he's just got unbelievable catch radius. So his hands
at
are
6'0", 198? I mean, 178?
178, yeah. I'm telling you, watch the kid's tape. He can take the top off. He's not going to be one of your top 5 fastest kids in the draft. But as far as all-around game, he's up there with anyone. The only thing that'll draw him back in the Patriots' eyes, and I was shocked when this time came in, he ran about a 7.1 or 7.23 cone, which we know they absolutely prize that. They make almost no exceptions. But I think the play speed and the play quickness is much better than that time. So for him, the biggest thing is strength. How does he handle against press? We saw a little bit of it when Penn State hosted Auburn last year, and you had another guy, second-round corner, Roger McCreary, handled him a little bit. But in terms of, he can catch bad passes, and that's what they need and what they just got in Devontae Parker. You need someone who scares you a little bit deep and intermediate. People have compared him to Emmanuel Sanders. I think people the last 5 to 7 years would have taken Emmanuel Sanders in New England.
You understand that everybody looks slower in a Penn State uniform.
Yeah, it's the shoes, right?
They do.
Yeah, those black shoes, got to get rid of them.
Last guy you love.
So this is a homer pick. I went to UConn, grew up in Storrs, Connecticut, but Travis Jones, defensive tackle out of UConn, I think fits exactly what we're talking about with that run stuffer in the middle. 6'4", 325. He's got experience two-gapping. He just dominated the Senior Bowl. From the few clips that I've seen, talking to people that they were there, you would have thought he was, throwing an Alabama helmet on this kid. It would have made all the sense in the world. And he's a great backup option if Jordan Davis, that, moving planet from Georgia, is not available in the first round, because he'll go somewhere in the second. And I think the other thing to remember about him is UConn did not play in 2020 due to COVID restrictions. This is a kid who's played one football season the last 2 years. If he dominated like he did at the Senior Bowl and all of last season, he's still got a lot of upside they haven't tapped into.
Good deal. So that concludes that portion of the program. Folks, you've seen Andrew on Boston Sports Tonight. Don't know if he's been on early edition, but we're happy to have him here. He is at the Boston Herald, as you know. As he just explained, he's from UConn, went to UConn, from Storrs, Connecticut. Let's give you a little bit more insight into Andrew, because he's one of the guys that you should be turning to for your Patriots coverage. Come on with me and Phil, please.
Yeah.
But give me 3 things that you absolutely love. I don't care if it's reading books. I don't care if it's a series you like to binge. 3 things Andrew Callahan loves.
Well, we're always binging quick slants, right? You and my girl Mego, we
have to
take that off the board. All right, let's go. Good beer on a payday. I used to live in the Fenway area. They have a small beer garden, Trillium. I don't know if you've had it, Tom. It's outstanding. I've got some good friends of Vitamin C down in the South Shore. Treehouse. You get paid on a Friday. You take a 4-pack into the weekend. Second thing, Sox Yankees. 4:05 first pitch at Fenway on a Saturday. There's nothing better. You get the sun setting in Boston. I think that was the same. You go back 20 years. Pedro throwing down Don Zimmer. You got the Veritek fight with A-Rod. All of the best Sox-Yankees games when I was growing up, 4:05 at Fenway, and they still have a couple here, even though Fox now is bumping them to 7.
I'm so glad. So you get the whole concept of what I want. Just throw it out there. 3 things you love that are just ambiguous, and fill it in. Go ahead.
Yeah. We've done football for 25 minutes. We're sick of football at this point. But I think going big picture, as far as work related, I love writing stuff that just kind of has some staying power, right? We just did this podcast. It might have gotten someone through a car ride, a run, work, whatever it is. But no one cares about this tomorrow or the next day. No, this was fun. But the stories you do, You can, sorry to burst your bubble. You know what I'm talking about, though, if you give me another second. The reporting or conversations you might have had with Brady through the years that provide some real insight into who that guy was. That stays with people. Stories that I might do, about Gunnar Olszewski a couple years ago, or Dave Ziegler, whomever it might have been, to kind of understand who that person is and sticks around, because we tweet from the same press conferences. I'm writing up injury reports in week 12. They're going to change within 24 hours. So much of this crap that we do is so transactional. It could be even breaking a trade. Shaq Mason a couple weeks ago going to Tampa. No one cares in the next 48 hours. And that's fine. That's part of the business. But when you get to sink into a story, that will have some sort of connection for fans to another player or coach, or that will stick with them for whatever reason that you did a really, really great job on. That's the stuff that I love to hold on to and kind of circle back to, because, that's what we're here for, kind of the things that.
Yeah. And that, to me, to piggyback that's the privilege that I've had, unbelievable privilege. I would put it up against really any other sports writer over the last 50 to 75 years, quite candidly. Mike Reese and I talk about that a lot. Front row seat to the NFL's greatest dynasty, with the staying power over 20 years that overshadows the Packers or the Niners or the Cowboys or the Steelers, continual. And that's why, to document all facets of it, the highs, the rebuilds, the next highs, the lows, the controversies, and the dismounts, it's a privilege, because, that's when Robert Kraft turns the heat up on Bill Belichick in 2022, that's a move that's informed by 2021 and 2020 and 2019 and the Tom Brady decision, where Kraft said, "You make it, Bill," and Brady goes and wins a Super Bowl. All of it is interlinked. And that, to me, is why we're so lucky in the staying power of documenting those things. I think maybe for myself, Andrew, again, let's make it about me, the draft's fascinating. You can spend all the time you want on, Nakobe Dean, but the more seismic picture, the more lasting and indelible picture that we need to cover is how this interplay between an 80-year-old owner and a 70-year-old head coach at the end of this dynasty will play out, because people will still be talking about, so what happened to the Patriots toward the end after Brady left? And they'll be talking about that in 2060.
Right.
Climate change be damned. So.
Yeah, if we're still hanging around, right. Both of those guys staring down their kind of football mortality. Like, that's, again, their legends are secure, but the endings aren't written yet. So when we get to delve into that, again, as much as I love doing an injury report week 11 on a Thursday, when I want to go home.
Taking attendance out there on a Thursday.
Right. Like, the daily stuff, I'm not saying it's meaningless, but you get what I'm getting at. The stories are just that took extra time, knowing that they're going to last for longer. That's the stuff that I think we both appreciate and what we're here for. So, all
right, buddy. Hey, Andrew Callahan from the Boston Herald. How do we catch you on Twitter?
@_ Andrew Callahan. And I got to find the guy who's got my full name, because the underscore has been a pain in my ass since I got on the beat. But @_ Andrew Callahan on Twitter, bostonherald.com. And that's about it.
All right, my guy. Thank you so much. And we will see you soon on Boston Sports Tonight, early edition. Quick slants. And of course, we will read you in the Herald. See you, buddy.
Thanks, Tommy.